Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Cricket Mehfil. I'm your host, Behram Kazi, and today we have a very, very special guest with us here to talk women's cricket and also Pakistan women's cricket. She is Ellie Indie from the Women's Cricket Rambling podcast and is also an ambassador for Her Game Too, a cricket campaign which highlights sexism within the sport. So, welcome to the show, Ellie, and it's a privilege to have you over here. Thank you so much for taking out the time. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
Perfect. So I've got a bunch of questions ready here for you, a bunch of talking points. And the first one, of course, is Pakistan's women's cricket and their recent performance in the Asia Cup. Now, it was a memorable campaign for the girls in green. They had won 5 out of their 6 group games. They defeated India after a long, long time. And barring that one defeat, shock defeat, I'd say, versus Thailand, they had 5 different players of the match performers, and we saw some great lower order hitting from the prodigy Aisha Naseem, and then also Nidadar was at her superstar best. And of course, we also saw Umaima Sohail steal the show with her all round brilliance, and Tuba Hussain, the young leg spinner, show her guile as well. It might have ended in agony for Pakistan falling 1 run short in the semi final versus Sri Lanka. But overall, I think there's a lot to take away for the women's team, especially, the challenges that Pakistan's women face to get to the team in the first place. It's a little taboo for women to play the sport in Pakistan, and they don't have access to the same sort of facilities and even to the sport in general, I would say. So for them to come up and produce that sort of a performance, what would be your assessment of it overall?
Yeah, I think we sort of expected them to finish that top table. I personally expected them to finish second, and then they lost to Sri Lanka in that tense last game in the semi-final, which could have gone either way. We could have seen Pakistan in that semi, we could have seen Sri Lanka, well, we did. I think it's what we expected of Pakistan. I think, Bismah Maroof struggling with that strike rate, like you say, Nidada is brilliant. She's so consistent, and she just really seems to be pulling that team at the moment, as well as taking handfuls of wickets. I think she finished their 3rd highest wicket taker and the 7th overall in the comp. So she's been such a consistent player, so key to that Pakistan side. And you mentioned earlier as well, Aisha Naseem, one of the best and up and coming players, I would say, at the moment, and I can't wait to see her get signed by the big leagues because she can hit a ball. It is incredible. But for Pakistan, I think you look at the result, 3rd, probably not one that fans would have wanted. I think everyone expected that 2nd place. But when you look at some of the individual performances and you actually look at where Pakistan women's cricket is going in the future, I think you can be really positive about that.
Yeah, absolutely, especially given the fact that Fatma Sana wasn't a part of this squad. And I think the pace attack was very well complemented by the spinners. And there are a lot of positives, of course, to take away from this. And to my second point, again, like I mentioned before, that women in Pakistan don't have the same sort of access to the sport compared to, let's say, some other big test playing nations. And now Ramiz Raja has come up with the initiative of the Women's T20 League, which is a PSL style women's competition. It was actually announced before the women's IPL, so I think we have that on the Indian Cricket Board, of course, the BCCI. But I think it's phenomenal, and just the fact that, there's a lot of commercial value coming into the women's sport and opportunities will only increase. And, in general, cricket returning to Pakistan will just have another facet attached to it. So how do you look at this league and the growth of the women's game in general?
I think it's great seeing these leagues coming up all over the world, but like you mentioned, especially in Pakistan, where these facilities, these tournaments, they don't come every day. These things are very hard to fight for, and so it's great to see it. I think it's going to improve that talent pool that Pakistan already have, because if we're going to see more products like Aisha Naseem's, your Fatima Sana's, your Diana Beggs, then we're going to have a very strong Pakistan side in the coming years. They've also got that overseas slot. I think it's 6 overseas and 6 overseas. Oh my god, 6 overseas in an 18-player squad. So I think that's gonna help, the younger talents, because you're playing against people like, it's not been announced, but players like Deandra Dotter and Sophie Ecclestone, who were world class, #1 at what they do. So it's gonna help them in that way. And I think for the current players, you're like your Nidadars, who aren't new to this. She's got over 100 T20 caps. She's definitely not new to this game. But for her, I think it'll improve her game, and that's going to be scary to think about what a top class Nidada can do, because at the moment she's so consistent, she's getting the runs at such a quick rate, and again the wickets. So if we see players like her who are not new but are experienced in that Pakistan side getting a chance in these leagues, we're going to see a really strong Pakistan side with both the talent pool coming up and the current players in the side. I'm really excited for this league.
Yes, I concur, and especially the pipeline that will be established for that talent pool to come in and express themselves. And, Pakistan is currently on the rise, Pakistan's women's cricket. And for a fan, it's really, really exciting to see this initiative brought in. And I'm sure that the commercial value will also only increase with time. And like you said, that when the players will get to share dressing rooms with top foreign players. I would love to see Tuba Hassan get some time with Alana King, for instance. Stuff like that really excites you, and I hope that this venture goes a long way. Now, along the same lines, Ellie, Fatma Sana was the only Pakistani female cricketer to participate in the 60 and the women's CPL, and Nida Dar has some women's Big Bash League experience, but other than that, you don't really see Pakistan's female cricketers feature elsewhere a lot. So do you think that there might be some sort of reason behind this, or what's your analysis of that whole situation?
Partially because of coverage. I'm not quite aware of the domestic tournaments going on in Pakistan at the moment for the women, but if I don't know, then it's probably not being well covered, so you don't get to see these up and coming talents, which again is why we need this women's T20 league, so we can see these talents, we can identify them, and then they can get picked up in leagues around the world. I guess it's because they're not being picked up in other leagues. They're not going to get picked up in other, if you're not going to get picked up in the WBBL, you're not going to get picked up in the CPL and things like that. You've sort of got to be in there to be shared around in a way. So it's a bit of a tricky one, and I just think it is kind of down to coverage. The Pakistani women's team is not getting quite a lot of coverage. We're not seeing players like Aisha Naseem get picked up, even though they should be, because they will be world class and they're such an asset to the side. It will happen. I think we will see these players get picked up by these leagues, and Satima Sana, she's the start. She's the first of many more to come, I think. But I think you've got to put it down to coverage. If these players aren't getting spread about, you can't really see how they're playing. You can't really be selected.
Yeah, here's to hoping that changes soon with all of the coverage that's about to happen, really, and the PCB is taking out time and money to address the women's game, and definitely I've already seen a lot of progress. And given how far behind Pakistan were compared to other nations which play the sport, I think that they're slowly rising, and there's a lot of promise in there. Now, to a bit more broader questions, Ellie, and we all saw Bismah Maroof make her comeback after giving birth to a daughter, who we've also seen on screen multiple times, and it's just so heartwarming to watch. But just the fact that female cricketers are allowed to go to maternity leave, are supported financially, and then are allowed to make their comeback into the team, and especially in Bismah's case, she's also captain. So it was quite big. So how significant do you think this shift in mentality is with respect to women's cricket, and just making the game more accessible for the female cricketers, and to give them that sort of leeway and accommodate them to fit in their lives as mothers and daughters, and then coming back to the sport that they love to play?
I think it's great. I think this is an example, and Bismah's not the first, and I hope she won't be the last. We've seen Leah Tahura, Amy Satterthwaite, Megan Shute. She took a bit of time off at the start of that WBBL campaign with the birth of her first child. One thing that is important about Bismah Maroof and her journey in maternity is that she got this maternity leave, so I think that's pretty much, she got paid time off as you would in a regular work setting, which is brilliant. I think she's the first player, man or woman, to be offered this by the PCB, which is brilliant. And it will change players' attitudes to pregnancy and maternity. Bismah Maroof is proof that this won't change your cricket. You can still play cricket, and at an international level, and you can captain your international side even after giving birth. That shouldn't define you, that shouldn't stop you from playing cricket, and it's wonderful to see, and especially the way that the PCB have treated Bismah during that time. Yeah, it is wonderful to see, and fingers crossed that we get more stories like this and more attitudes from the boards towards players like this.
Yeah, it seems all but fair that women's cricketers, they get to live their family lives and, play the sport at the same time and are accommodated to do so. So that's a big positive going forward, and I think the PCB should be really proud of themselves for taking that initiative. And now to my next question, Ellie, is that we see a proliferation of T20 cricket and white ball cricket within the women's sport, but when it comes to, first class cricket or red ball cricket or even test cricket, you only see like the big three sort of functioning at that level. So, how important is it for the women's game that there is more development in this area and more female cricketers get to play red ball cricket? And do you feel like it's an area which is sort of like overlooked by the entire fraternity? And there should be more work done in this area in particular?
Yeah, definitely there does, because when you see things like New Zealand women haven't played a test since 2004, that's ridiculous. So you cannot believe that is a real statistic when you see 5 test match series for men regularly, the Ashes, how many tests does that have? 5 in one go. That's probably more than women get in 2 years. So it is really important that we are developing this in more ways than one. It's about the equality. Women should be playing on the same, this is a level playing field, but if we can't play the same formats as the men, then that statement means nothing. We need to be playing the same formats, we need to playing as regularly as the men in order for that statement to be true. Red ball cricket as a whole is massively important for players because it helps you with your mentality. I think you know how to pace yourself in certain games. It really helps just mentality wise in the game, not just how you're pacing yourself but also how you're thinking about the game. It is something that is a massive asset to your game, and the fact that almost a generation of White Ferns players haven't been able to do that. And it's not just the White Ferns. I don't think the Pakistan women have had a test since 2007.
It's been a long, long
same
time.
With the
Yes.
Netherlands, same with South Africa, and these are quite top teams, and they're just not playing, and it's ridiculous. So I think we need to see boards step up. We need to see boards really pushing for tests like England are. We've got the 5-day test at Trent Bridge next year in that Ashes series, which is brilliant, and I think the ECB are a great example of how you can push for test. Alright, it is a test a year, we would like to see more, but it's a start. We know that cricket boards, again, like New Zealand, where we haven't had that test since 2004, that there seems to be a reluctance because they had been providing, T20, ODI over again. They wanted to sway their women away from playing tests. So to see, the ECB pushing for tests like this is brilliant, and I just hope that other teams, other boards can take this on board and take the ECB approach and make their teams play more tests, because there's a demand. Players have voiced their demands for quite some time now about playing tests, and it's about time someone else other than the ECB or the BCCI or Cricket Australia listened.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And also, you mentioned the 5-day test. That was a major pain point, wasn't it? That the tests would end after 4 days and you'd see so many draws. And that's a change that's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the 4-day test we've had since the dawn of time in women's cricket. So to see this 5-day test, which is something that we've been begging for, especially for tests when England are playing, because it always seems to rain and ruin the test. So to see that 5-day test is great. That's how you make that level playing field, because we're playing the same days, we're playing the same format. It's great to see that. And also we might get a result this time, which is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we sure hope so. And on the same sort of point, you mentioned the White Ferns. Now, they are the only cricket team in the world which earn as much as their male counterparts, the Black Caps. And that, I think, was a phenomenal decision by New Zealand cricket to have equal match fees. Now, how important do you think that is in terms of equality and just making that a level playing field across genders and to grow the women's game in general?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not just at international level as well. It's at the domestic level where they're playing for the same team, they're getting the same pay, which is incredibly important. These girls can't just go about job to job trying to fund their cricket. Their cricket is now funding them in a way, which is absolutely brilliant to see. I do have a few problems with it. At the domestic level, they don't have that 4-day cup, so as a result they're probably not earning as much as the men in that sense. Obviously, in competitions like the Super Smash, the HBJ, and the Ford Trophy, they're obviously earning the same amount because they play the same. But when they're missing that massive tournament, then they're not really earning the same. Although it is great to see equal pay, and that's what we need. You know, it used to be 88% is what the women earn in New Zealand compared to the men. Now it's 100. They're earning the same, which is brilliant. And it's the same, I guess, with the women. You know, their domestic summer looks very quiet. They have an ODI series and a T20 series versus Bangladesh, but that's sort of it as their summer goes. And then when you look at the Black Caps, they're playing Test, ODI, T20 pretty much every day. So when you look at it, they're not earning as much because, again, schedule, and it's not necessarily working out in the players' way there, but you know, it is equal pay and it's a start, and hopefully other boards take note and follow this.
Yeah, here's to hoping, and we definitely hope to see other boards take notice of this and follow suit. Now, one final question for you, Ellie, is that how important is the introduction of the Women's Under-19 World Cup, which is quite recent, and the ICC, I think, is taking a major step forward over here towards the development of the youth when it comes to female cricketers. And I know Pakistan's going to be phenomenal in that particular World Cup because we introduced them young. So super stoked for that. And how do you think that this will impact the women's sport across the globe?
Yeah, I mean, if you start developing players young, they're only going to get better as they grow up. We're going to see players from the Under-19s comp 6 years time or something like that, and they're going to be world beaters at the age of like 25, and it's going to be insane, but it's going to be amazing to watch because, you know, they've been prepared for this. It sort of says to me that, you know, they're looking to professionalize the women's game even more because, you know, we're getting opportunities at such an early stage in their career to perform. So actually this Under-19 competition is a massive symbol for me that, you know, we're going to get that equality because, again, we didn't have this before. The men's had their Under-19 comp, but we didn't. So now we do, and it's brilliant. I think in terms of development, some countries develop better than others, but I think this tournament's going to pull that all together and we're going to see them all develop together. What's the word I was thinking of?
In unison.
Yeah, maybe. And we're gonna see them develop in fusion together. So that's going to be brilliant. And I think you know, there are going to be names in there that we need to watch out for, especially coming from Pakistan. But yeah, it's going to be great to see how that kicks off. I think there's some names already in there from England that you might be expecting. You know, names like Grace Scrivens. So it's going to be interesting to see this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the PCB has assembled a team, which was a first, and I'm really happy to see that from them. And just the drive from Ramiz Raja, not just in women's cricket, but across the board, really. He's doing a lot for Pakistan cricket right now. But before I let you go, Ellie, I think the most important question that I still have not asked you is, what's your take on that dance that the Sri Lankan ladies brought out for us after winning that semi-final?
Do you know what? I think maybe if it weren't Pakistan, it would have been a good dance. But I mean, I loved it. I love a bit of energy in the game. We love a bit of personality in teams. Maybe when they're not beating Pakistan in the semi-final, but it's good energy and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for celebrating, and you know, Sri Lanka's gone through a tough year, so I'm happy that their sports teams have delivered. But thank you so much for taking out the time, Ellie. It was an absolute privilege to have you on the show and loved your insight. And everyone who's watching this, go follow Women's Cricket Ramblings. It's a fantastic podcast. And if you feel that the playing field should be level and the women's sport should be elevated, go support her cause with her game too. Follow them on Twitter and do what you can, raise that awareness, and let's wash out sexism from the sport. But yes, thank you so much, Ellie, and yeah, I hope we get to speak again sometime.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, that's a wrap for this episode, viewers. And if you enjoyed it, go like this, share this with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to all of our social media platforms, because we at Grassroots Cricket, we're trying to change the landscape of cricket coverage in Pakistan. We're moving away from sensationalism and bringing the focus back towards the cricket. So do follow our cause, support us, and subscribe to our content. That's all for now. I'll catch you soon enough, because the T20 World Cup is coming and we have lots of fun content lined up for you guys. That's all for today. Goodbye.
Shot और कैच आउट हो गए